I think it was like, this is discipline to me. Like, you requested the medical records. How dare you do that? We're taking him away from you.
Welcome to episode 25 of the Pawdoption Guide podcast. I'm your host, Bethany Muir, and this is your one-stop shop for the knowledge and advice you need to adopt and integrate that rescue dog of your dreams. Now, 25, that feels like a pretty special number. I'm really stoked about that, actually. And I think today's episode is very much worthy of being episode 25. Because of the work I do to help people adopt dogs from dog rescues in shelters across Ontario, I occasionally get some feedback from people regarding their personal experiences with dog adoption. And in the past year, I have had 6 people share strange and abnormal adoption experiences with me. And 5 out of those 6 people that had these experiences had them with the same Toronto-based GTA rescue that I will not name for legal purposes, but I think you'll be able to come to a conclusion about which one that is. They're not shy, they don't stray from the limelight, so they're not hard to pick out, but I think you'll have an idea of which one it is by the end of this episode, or when you're done reading the comments on social media about this. The term scam is defined as a deceptive act or operation. And this term covers more than just the people on Petfinder that are posing as dog rescues and they're just taking your money before you even see a dog. It really also applies to that rare dog rescue or shelter that's misleading adopters by just failing to provide support, care, information that's super necessary for the health and safety of everyone involved in the dog adoption process. So I'm talking fosters, volunteers, adopters, and the dog. The 5 experiences that were shared with me fit the description of a deceptive operation. So today I'm going to anonymously share some of these experiences, as these people have either received threats to not speak about this dog rescue or are just fearful because this rescue organization is known for trying to hush whistleblowers. So by the end of this episode, I want you to know the red flags that scream dog rescue scam. Please note that one red flag does not a scam make, but in my experience, 3 or more is definitely a sign that you'd be best to look elsewhere. So the first experience you're going to hear today comes from someone who tried to adopt a dog through this particular Toronto dog rescue and instead found herself in a web of dishonesty between the adoption coordinators and the foster parent.
So we just wanted to get an older dog. And of course, the easiest way to do that is to adopt. And we had been looking on Petfinder and we had been looking at all the adoption sites and Toronto Humane Society, probably for a few months now, trying to figure out like if we see any dogs that we like, but that are also good with cats, but that are also not really, really high energy. I noticed a lot of the dogs online are really high energy, probably because people get them and then can't actually support them. So I thought, this dog's adorable. Her profile was perfect. Like she was calm, she was sweet, possibly good with cats, good with other dogs, not really, really high energy, but enough that, like for hikes and going to the beach and taking her out and stuff, because we're kind of active people. So we wanted a dog that we could take with us. And I looked at their website and it said that it was going to take about 3 to 4 weeks for your application to go through. So on April 2nd, I sent in the application. I paid the fee. I filled everything out. So I sent that in. And then on the 3rd, I actually looked on the website again and I noticed that all the dogs have a link to who is fostering them and if they have an Instagram title
Yes.
or an Instagram tag, right? I was so excited. I was like, oh my God, I can actually talk to this person and make sure that the dog is still available. Because one of the things that I heard was that they leave dogs on the website to entice you to apply. And then when you apply, they tell you, oh, I'm sorry, that dog's no longer available, or we forgot to take her down. And a lot of this is on Reddit. A lot of this is on the Toronto Star. So that's why I immediately contacted the foster, because I was like, great, I can immediately get an answer to see if she's still available. If she's not, I'll just drop out, you know? So I did message them, and I actually commented on some of the pictures of her. And I noticed that one of the pictures was from March 22nd. So I thought, okay, that's not that bad. Maybe she's still available. And he said, yes, she was. He said she was still available. And he was telling me about her personality and how she's doing and how she's a very happy dog, and how so far no one had actually had a visit with him yet. And he explained that he did not have anything to do with the adoption process. He explained that he just waits for a call from the coordinator to tell him, we're going to be having a visit. We're going to be having an online visit. Please let us know when you're available. And he just goes along with it. So I said, okay, you know what? Like, I sent in the application. Hopefully I'll hear from you soon. And then he messaged me back and he said, yeah, it's probably going to take the 3 weeks for you to find out, you know, if you're going to get her. So I found about 3 different possible emails for people that work. And I sent them emails saying, you know, hi, I know I just sent in my application. I've spoken with the foster parent. The dog is still available. You know, can you let me know if she's available still? Can you let me know how long it's going to take for my application to go through? Do you have a lot of people looking at her? You know, in which case I probably won't be processed in time. And I sent all those emails out on the 3rd. I got a reply back from Lee, who is one of the adoption coordinators. And she said, I've just approved your application. Please schedule a time in my calendar to book your phone interview. So she sent me all the links for their adoption application PDF, which lists out everything, the process, what you have to bring for the meet and greet, what their vetting standards are, what their expectations are if you do adopt, the contract,
Sure.
everything. And then there's one of those like calendar LinkedIn things where you just say, this is the date, this is the time, and you sign up. I picked the next day because I was excited, you know, so I picked the next day at noon. And then I got an email on the 4th at 7:00 saying, do you think we can do our call on Wednesday or Thursday instead? I have to work at our vet clinic tomorrow, and it's typically a very chaotic day. This is the most important part. This is where the excitement and the happiness came from. I've placed on a hold for you, so no worries about missing out. Please let me know what day works best for you. So I thought, okay, you know what? She's on hold. I don't have to panic anymore. I can pick a different day. Everything will be fine. I'm, you know, being considered for her along with whoever else is. At least I know I'm in the running, right? And she's on hold.
Exactly.
So I sent an email back literally within a minute saying, hi, both days work for me, but I'd prefer the Wednesday because I'm home all day Wednesday, right? I didn't get a reply. So then I sent another message a full day later at 6:00. Hi, did you get my email? I said anytime Wednesday would be perfect. We're both home all day. And this is on the Tuesday that I'm sending this, and I'm hoping we can reply, right? Because Wednesday was, you know, no reply again. So I was getting really confused. I didn't know what was going on. So Wednesday morning at 10:00 in the morning, hey, I'm home all day. Don't know if you got the emails from Gmail. Let me know if you're going to be calling today. Here's my phone number. I didn't want to be rude, but at the same time, it was like, am I going to be sitting around all day, like waiting to hear back? At 4:24, I finally get an email back. Hi, there have been some changes. Her foster parents have decided to adopt her, which is great news for her. I think her staying with them would be the best for her as she is already situated and comfortable with them. I'm sorry about this. I'd be happy to match you with some of our cat-friendly pups. If anyone else piques your interest, please let me know. So the weird thing about this, and the reason that I was so kind of irritated, was because all of this has been deleted, by the way. They basically just erased this whole situation. But yeah, I had been speaking with him from Monday to Wednesday about, you know, hey, I'm really excited. I got my interview. Hey, I'm excited. I read through the PDF pamphlet. There's going to be a virtual meet and greet, kind of like this on a Zoom call. I can't wait to see her. I'm so excited. And I was getting replies back like, oh, we can't wait to hear. They'll definitely let us know if that's going to be happening. Still doing good, blah, blah, blah. And they even posted a new picture of her. He was liking all my comments and stuff. And then I get this email. So I went on Instagram and I messaged him, what's going on? Like, are you actually adopting her? Like, I'm really confused. You didn't even tell me any of this, right? And he had basically said that they have to be impartial and unbiased when talking to other people who are interested in the dogs, because he said if he starts telling everyone who comments on the dog on Instagram that he has also applied, he said, well, no one's going to apply for her. And I said, well, yeah, that's because you would be honest that you're in the running for her and you're fostering her. You're probably going to get her because you're a good home for her. There's nothing negative about. I'm happy that she's getting a good home. Exactly. What I'm unhappy about is that you led me on for 3 days, not telling me that you were actually in the running. I had even messaged him saying that she was on hold for me. And I asked him about that. And I said, I told you that she was on hold for me. You never said anything about how you had applied and that my hold didn't even count. And he replied saying, well, he didn't even know that she was on hold, even though I had told him this. So he started kind of denying everything. So I also sent an email back to Lee because, I said, this doesn't make sense. I've been speaking with them on Instagram this whole time. They were looking forward to meeting me and introducing me to her. Like, is this some sort of scam? Because I was really confused and I was really hurt, actually. So she said, and this was it. She said, no, this is not a scam. The fosters changed their mind and submitted their own application for adoption. So this is where I sent my, big email back. And I said, look, I'm only going to ask this once. I want my $40 back. I understand that the $40 does not guarantee that you are going to get a dog. I understand that the $40 does not guarantee that you will be considered at all. I understand that it's basically a donation. It doesn't mean that I will even be a part of the process. But I said, however, it should guarantee me honesty and transparency. You told me in an email that it was on hold for me. That doesn't mean that someone else has submitted an application for adoption. Apparently, they were lying to me to seem impartial about the adoption process. Well, they knowingly had applied and were waiting to be confirmed. Why would you lie about this? The dog could not have been on hold for me if you were already considering the foster's application. You could have emailed me and said, hey, she's not on hold. We have someone else ahead of you. And I would have been fine with it because it's completely normal, And I'm actually really upset that everything that I read online came true. So I sent that email. She said, hi, an application does not mean you have first dibs on any dog or are able to move forward with the adoption process at all. And I'm reading that going, yeah, that's what I just told you. I understand. And then she said, we conduct phone interviews to screen and see if you are a good fit for one of our dogs. We had not done this. The foster family applied after you and I had spoken about. Upon seeing this, I have decided it is in the dog's best interest staying with the foster family. This is a situation that doesn't always occur and is unique to this particular dog. I highly doubt that. So I emailed her back and I said, if the foster family spoke to you after I had applied, after you and I had spoken about, you should have honored the fact that you told me she was on hold. You didn't. That's where the lie, the fraud, and the dishonesty comes into effect. That's basically the whole thing that happened.
I think overall, in the whole scenario, you can see how they get away with this. It's like a series of questionable events in this situation. It's outright. It's not like you went and you met the dog, you took the dog home and had all these things wrong with it and was clearly like completely opposite of what they had told you. People. There's all these small details that have been misleading and are red flags overall. The fact that you have to pay a fee to apply. I've never heard of anyone doing that. That's strange. Adopters who don't usually have the wool pulled over their eyes, they're able to get those people in the door because they have a very professional looking website. Everything they do comes across very professional from an outsider's perspective. They have a huge following. All those things line up that make you think, okay, I'm going to look at this website. I'm going to apply for this dog. And then even some of their policies online that are super inclusive toward, different genders and races, like they just have these inclusivity things that kind of make you feel like they're on the up and up with the ethics. Looking back, if you could think about what some of the red flags were, what would you point out was, okay, this seems off? What were some of the things that really stood out for you?
First of all, the fact that the adoption process says give it about 3 to 4 weeks. And then I also on Instagram even messaged was asking for an update on my application, and they said it's going to take time, give it a few weeks. And then when I actually found the legit emails of people at the company, all of a sudden it was, yes, you've been approved within a day. So that was crazy because I was thinking about all the people who are probably sitting at home right now waiting for their applications to go through, thinking the dog is still available. That was a red flag. The second red flag was changing the appointment on me and saying, we can't do it. Can we please reschedule? I thought that was odd only because of all the articles I've read online. It was kind of like, I feel like I'm going down the wrong road at this point. And then,
so yeah, those things kind of corroborated with,
and then
what
the
you
not
had
getting
seen.
the not getting a reply after she had said Wednesday, Thursday, and then on Tuesday in the morning. Yeah. Okay. Let's do Wednesday anytime. No reply until Wednesday night. That's probably it in terms of red flags. After that, it was just the denying everything. So quick to just be like, nope, you are wrong. You did not ever have dibs. But you said I did. You said I had dibs. I didn't make that up.
It's a messed up scenario. It's the biggest thing is the fact that they told you the dog was on hold, and
that's why I wanted to tell people, because that's the biggest sort of like, how dare you,
Yeah, exactly. And also the fact that you were given, they talk about this long timeline, 3 to 4 weeks, and then literally you get this response super fast. I just think that was a part of it, was like 3 to 4 weeks. And then all of a sudden, oh, tomorrow. Well, most rescues never put a dog on hold, but B, that they said they put it on hold for you following just an application.
Exactly.
That's strange.
It is.
Yes.
Really strange. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a huge thing, that like they're doing things differently. Yeah. Quite the strange experience there. This next experience features someone who volunteered as an adoption coordinator with this dog rescue. So listen as we find out why she just had to leave after working with them for 2 years.
First heard of the organization during Hurricane Harvey. So I had adopted a rescue dog of my own. And my first rescue dog, I fell in love with her. I wanted to help other dogs. I remember Hurricane Katrina and all the images of dogs being stranded. I mean, it just, made me really upset. So I donated a bunch of dog stuff to the organization in preparation of bringing these dogs home. I think it was about 10, maybe. I'm not sure. It was small. It was a small intake. And then after that, they needed help with calls or references, home visits. I had time to help. So after that, I started processing adoptions. So I was one of the adoptions coordinators, and I was an adoption coordinator until 2019. So that was about almost 2 years. And I left in 2020 after the workload was just very unmanageable. And the expectations of us were unreasonable. And we were told to have 3 dogs adopted by a week, which is a lot. When you think of and at that point, I had come to see that a lot of information wasn't being disclosed. So I came back from a vacation 2019, and I felt like I was being pressured to try to have these dogs rehomed. So I had older dogs that I was processing applications for, and there was two of them. I think there was the last two adoptions that really stood out to me. That just were difficult because one of them had really bad teeth, and I knew there was an issue with his teeth, but I didn't know how bad it was until the owners called me crying, saying that they didn't know how bad his teeth were. And then when they tried to get an explanation from management, they were threatened with lawsuit. They were told to bring the dog back to the vet, but that vet is closed Sunday. So obviously, the founder is using a template and didn't realize that if they were going to continue asking questions about the dog's health, they were getting threatened with emails, and they said that to resolve this whole situation, just to bring the dog back to the vet.
So was there like a lack of access to medical records for you as an adoption coordinator?
Yes, and I'm not going to throw the vetting team under the bus. I think the founder controlled access to information too.
I worked at a vet clinic, so I know that it should be through the rescue that you were receiving records, or from upper management in that rescue, not from the vet.
So with this particular dog, I was talking to the owners. They didn't want to give him back because they didn't think that his teeth would be taken care of. And they found out about his teeth about maybe a week or two after he was adopted. They were just told he needed tartar removal, like basic dog dental hygienic care, but it was actually rotten teeth. I saw the pictures, and I have the pictures.
It was more like a full mouth extraction scenario.
Yeah, and they told me that it was so bad, it had burned the hole in his nasal cavity, so they had to do some skin grafting.
That's very concerning.
And I did some digging around. I had reached out to a few of his fosters because he had a temporary foster intake night, and then he had another foster, and then I think she had him for about 2 weeks. And then she was allergic. She found out she was allergic to dogs. So he was moved on to another foster, and all three fosters noticed he had a hard time eating. But it was dismissed as, oh, he's old, he's still settling, he's stressed. But, I don't think there was any blood work done for him, and he's a senior dog. And that wasn't the first dog that I've come across that had the lack of care you would expect from a rescue. Also an older dog. Long story short, he was adopted through foster. Her daughter is friends with the adopter's granddaughter. Yeah. Okay. And so the granddaughters would play together. The adoptive parents saw the dog. They love him. They wanted an older dog. And then things went downhill after that. They knew that he had trouble, like he had a low appetite, but I don't think there was blood work done, or maybe not much of it. But he ended up having pancreatitis right after he was adopted. And I know that isn't always easy to spot, but they had asked for more clarity, and they were also met with threatening emails. It's unfortunate because I think after that, the founder wanted us to approach pet stores for fundraising and just awareness. And so this is complicated. It's a lot of these. So the people couple who adopted this older dog had pancreatitis and decided to keep him. their daughter owns pet store at the Danforth. Yeah, so they're active in the dog community, and so that connection was severe because of the founder's attitude. It was hard work we try to do to foster relationships is just undone because of the founder.
For sure. So yeah, you feel like you had a few of those scenarios where you were helping coordinate adoptions and appropriate medical information wasn't passed along, or the dogs that you were adopting out weren't being given appropriate medical care prior to being adopted out. Yeah.
Yeah. So with the dog with bad teeth, I had actually gone back to the vet and spoke to the veterinarian about the teeth, and he did tell the founder that he recommended extraction, and he told me he didn't know why it wasn't done. So that was all I needed to know, that they really weren't looking after the dog's best interest. And I have some friends still with the organization, and we talk about them, and I know they have an intake from a hoarding situation. I think that's coming today, maybe. But I just wonder, like, those dogs aren't going to be given the right care, like knowing what I know.
You were there 2 years. Did you feel like there was a change in care, or was it more like you were just slowly coming to realize that things were a certain way?
I think a lot of us had concerns about the size of the intakes, because for a while earlier on, like 30 was a lot. And then it just grew and grew. And then sometimes it'd be like, there'll be trouble at the border, or there'll be delays, but it's also like, it's 4 a.m. on a Monday morning. A lot of us have to work. We can't just give up our lives, right? So I didn't go to those intakes, but it's also that, if we didn't go, then you weren't seen as being a team player. But it's just like, if it was maybe 10 dogs, then I could have a better idea of how long it'll take. But with like 70, it just gets crazy. And having to find space where you can sort of conceal your actions, because you don't want to bring too much attention, right? So I think if you were to do an intake like that on city property, you'll be fined, or you need permission. And so there's always a parking lot. And then we outgrew the vet's parking lot.
So when you decided to leave the organization, what was that like for you?
A relief. A little sad that had, something that we all thought was a good thing just sort of self-imploded. But also, it was good to get out while I could, because I've heard there was a distemper outbreak and a few other health problems. So I'm glad I got out while I did.
Yeah.
I also just, after the last 2 dogs, that the older dogs that didn't have the care they deserved, I just didn't want to be part of that anymore.
As a volunteer in that rescue organization, what would you say were the red flags that you really, the things that made you most concerned about what they were doing?
Partly, I guess, how the intakes were just getting larger and larger. It was obvious that they couldn't keep up. We couldn't keep up. And I mean, after the dog I had adopted out had the bad teeth, and then having to do my own little investigation to find out the truth. How many other dogs are going through with health problems that aren't being properly disclosed. I mean, I heard rumors. Like I heard there was a dog that had worms, and they gave the foster person worms also. And and then I think my dogs were with the dog sitter that weekend, but we took in the dog for like 2 days that had kennel cough. So there were a lot of dogs coming up with like infectious diseases. Maybe they shouldn't be brought up. I mean, but then the founder would always just guilt trip us. Like, if we don't do this, then they'll die.
Yeah, a lot of organizations would have a quarantine period, or
Yeah.
that they're getting that deworming or testing done prior to bringing them across the border or moving them, so that we're not spreading diseases to or bringing diseases that aren't endemic to our area across the border.
And I know they have a hard time finding fosters as it is. You want to help out every dog, and there were dogs that had, very certain needs, specific needs. And she would just bring them up anyway. And yes, you want to help the dogs that nobody wants, but it's like, are we prepared for this? You have to think about, are you prepared for this? Is this the right thing to do?
Right. The repercussions of bringing up a dog that has a lot of medical needs or would be incredibly hard to adopt out, and maybe is not a good candidate for being moved.
No. And
Yeah.
I think she just does it for the tearjerker value, like just so I remember it was a blind dog. He was blind in both eyes, and because of that he had a lot of anxiety. So I'm not sure if he had bounced around from fosters to fosters, but I had gone to the vet because his fosters were dropping him off. They couldn't handle him anymore. And so I was there and I took hold of them. They weren't even like, what struck me was that they weren't even really sad about it. They just he had his walk. That was it. Okay. So I'm waiting for the new foster to pick him up. I later find out that the fosters who dropped him off, they took his trazodone. And so like, how are you properly vetting foster? I mean, it's not something you would think about, like, foster stealing your dog's meds, but when I keep seeing these posts scrambling for more fosters, like, is there a proper screening process? And then I'm waiting with the dog, and the new foster comes by and she picks him up. And then later that night, I find out that she doesn't want him anymore because he's freaking out. And he's freaking out because she's at work. She's a waitress. She tied him outside. This is a blind dog, right? And I'm like, where are these people coming from? I can't imagine like how
not being given maybe proper direction, but also not being actually like vetted properly, so that you understand the scenario that dog's going into.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that there was a point in time where they were encouraging you to adopt out about 3 dogs a week. Was there any specific time period that the dogs were supposed to decompress before they were adopted out?
No. So I was in charge of Petfinder. So during intake weekend, I would be home on a Saturday afternoon and putting in as much dogs online as I can. Sometimes there are like 100. It's a lot. And I would check in after intake. I think I would have them published even before intake, so you know what dogs were coming. But we would get emails, right after intake, and if everything went well, within that 72 hours, I think it still is, for a dog to get adopted, then they were adopted, which is really short.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like, how do you see a vet? How do you, like, especially during the pandemic where it was hard to get an appointment? How are these dogs getting screened?
Definitely. How have you even had a doctor's a vet appointment for them in that time? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have any experience seeing that profiles were omitting important details about dogs?
Yeah, I think I don't remember having to write anything about like aggressiveness on Petfinder. But I do know there was a dog that needed a new foster. And my friend's mom decided to foster him because it was a small dog, but he had bit her. And I think she needed like therapy for the use of her hand again. I think she might have lost a nerve or two. But this was never disclosed to the volunteer. I think at the time she was one of the management volunteers, Redemption Paws. So there were definitely traits that were being hidden.
And that's, I mean, I've seen their profiles recently and they look a lot more detailed than they used to be. But when I used to, send clients in that direction, I would see profiles that sometimes only had, age or maybe not even age, sex, and possible breed, and maybe no other information regarding that dog.
Yeah, sometimes the profile I get for Petfinder just name, sex, age, that's it. And we upload that right away, and people would ask questions and say we don't know that much. Sometimes I'll get then they'll ask the fosters like dog, and everything's great, but everything's great because you just got the dog. They need more time.
Hard to know in 3 days what all the traits are for this dog. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you sharing that information because, and certainly, there is some good intention or they wouldn't be where they are today. It's just, certainly there's lots of people out there who have had successful adoptions, but those have likely been the dogs that are more even tempered and just generally were easier dogs to adopt out, right? That would be easy dogs to rehome, or dogs that just didn't happen to have medical issues and that. But then you hear all these other stories and it's clear there's a lot of people who have been misinformed.
Yes, and I think the organization just grew too big too fast. When you think about they started out with 10 dogs, I think, for Hurricane Harvey, and then I remember I had about 100 dogs to input on Petfinder. It's probably more now. That's crazy.
Yeah, when they say they get hundreds of dogs per year, but they're getting 100 in one intake, that's really shocking.
And we always had a hard time finding fosters, so and they would encourage anyone to foster. So even if you had a small apartment, you can foster. But it's not, I don't think it's the most ideal situation, especially when some of these dogs were pregnant, and I'm not blaming anyone. You didn't know the dog was pregnant, but we had situations where the mother needs help whelping the puppies, and then they just stay in one small apartment, and there's noise complaints or smell complaints. It's not really fair to put this on your fosters, and it's certainly not fair to do that when you're not even offering to clean up.
There's a lack of support for the infrastructure, for the rescue, for the volunteers, for the fosters, but then on top of that, a lack of support for the dogs and the vetting that's missing out, or the appropriate environment for them to be in because a foster hasn't been well vetted for them.
So I remember you had 2 female dogs that had puppies. So I think one of them had 8. I can't remember the other one, but at the same time they had puppies. And I would go and puppy sit because it was fun. But I was talking to the foster of one set of puppies, and he just had a hard time keeping up with the food. It was the food, the poop bag, pee pads. It was all these supplies that you needed, and it was just constant. And we couldn't keep up with it. And so he just started. He couldn't go to his pet store, right? So you would just go to the corner store downstairs and buy just regular cheap dog food, which you don't want to give puppies. But there was a lack of support for the fosters, and I felt bad for them.
So they were probably told, I assume they were told they would have been supported with food for the animals.
Yeah, there should have been more food for them. There was never money for it. So there's times I decided, I'm on my way to puppy sit, I'll buy a bag of food. And I couldn't imagine being a foster parent and spending, I don't know, $100 a week, perhaps, on dog supplies. So they weren't giving much support.
Well, it's certainly upsetting to hear the inner workings of that dog rescue through that adoption coordinator. This last experience comes from a foster volunteer who was denied the opportunity to complete the foster journey with her first foster dog. And that was upon seeking some basic medical information from that dog rescue.
I wanted to start off with fostering because I knew what a big responsibility it would be to adopt a dog. And I didn't want to adopt and then have to return should something negative or some sort of medical condition come up. So that's why I decided to foster. I started, my start date was February the 12th. That's when I signed all the paperwork. And I was given the opportunity to foster a certain dog, but due to his size, I had to decline. And then literally that same day, I received an email about a woman who had adopted through this organization a year ago to the day. She had adopted him. And the dog was having incontinence issues, and he was a senior, and they were wondering if I would be able to take him in. And I jumped at that opportunity. He was a little Yorkie. He was very tiny, perfect to bring him home, especially having 2 cats. I was actually supposed to pick him up on the following weekend, which was about 4 days away, but they asked that I picked him up like literally the next day, which I did.
And that was the dog rescue organizing this?
Yes.
Okay.
There's an email thread of all of us talking, and I picked him up and he had a diaper on. He was a little bit stinky, and I was a little bit scared because I was like, oh my God, is he going to be peeing all over my house? Does he have to wear this diaper all the time? I wasn't sure what I was getting myself into, but I was up for the challenge. And he came to me with a whole bunch of diapers, which was good. But he came to me with only 3 cans of food that he did not want. He was refusing to eat them. I did everything and anything to get him to eat that, and he wouldn't. So I had to make my own food because when I requested food, they said they didn't have any to give to me within my area. And that they were in the middle of training someone, and that as soon as that person was trained, it would take a couple days that they would get back to me with the food. So I literally I went out and I bought him food because I wasn't going to be giving him chicken and rice and broth for all those days.
And as far as you knew, they were to be providing you that for fostering.
Yeah. And thank God he came with his bed. He had his bed. I ended up giving him a blanket. That became his favorite blanket. So those were our first few days. And you know what? I had him off of the diaper. I didn't have him on a diaper. Mind you, I was taking him out every hour and a half.
Yeah, you had the ability to do that, so that was good.
Yes. So I didn't think there was urinary issues. I think it was just more, I thought personally, it could have been like the owner didn't have time to take him out, and he was peeing inside.
Mm-hmm.
So it took about a week and a half for them to get him his first appointment to see what was wrong with him. And I took him. It was I didn't know that the vet was so far from where I was. It literally driving. It took me a little bit over an hour to get there, which was fine, but also gas is not cheap. Parking is not cheap. I had to pay for parking as well. Um, yeah, so I went there, dropped him off. I was not allowed to go inside. And I was about a half an hour, 40 minutes. I received a call to go pick him up. He had a urinary tract infection and he also had kidney stones.
Oh.
For me to stop giving him any food at home, anything that I bought him, to discard of it right away, and that he was going to be put on a special diet, which they did provide food for. It was the Royal Canin urinary food.
Yeah.
So he took that, but again, he wasn't really eating that well, and I ended up figuring out that it was an anxiety issue. I knew he had anxiety from the moment he came in. He's also very scared, very anxious. So slowly but surely, I got him to eat, and I actually had to feed him, spoon feed him, up until the day that they removed him from my care.
Okay.
They told me not to do that, but it's like he's not eating. So am I going to let him not eat? I'm not going to leave the food there for 8 hours and expect him to eat it. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I did
Yeah.
I did spoon feed him. And they also told me at that appointment that he had a collapsed trachea. I knew nothing about collapsed trachea. They didn't give me any information. So I came home and I did my research, and I'm like, oh my God, why am I taking him on his leash? Like, why am I like, no. So they told me to request a harness, which I did. They were only able to give it to me a week later. So while I was taking him for walks, I ended up making just a little thing where I could attach it to his jacket. I didn't have his collar on him because I didn't feel that it was fair for him to have it on, because he was constantly coughing. It literally
Yes.
sounded like he was going to throw up.
Yeah.
So I mentioned to them too that I was concerned about that. Like, is there anything that can be done? They never really answered that question. So fast forward a little bit ahead. So I had picked him up on the 15th. Sorry, I picked him up on the 16th. On March the 8th, that was his second follow-up appointment. I got an email that I got an email 3 days before this that he was to have an appointment on March the 8th. And I replied with frustration, because it's like, you can't give me 3 days notice that he has a vet appointment when you know that I am not going to be available. Like, I'm a nanny, so I'm not available. Like, I can't tell them 3 days before, oh, I can't work this day because I have to take the dog to the vet. Like, I just wish they would have said, we have these dates that are available. What days are you? But no, and it was like, they were very adamant, like, it has to be this date. So they scheduled someone to pick him up, which I was grateful for. They picked him up, and that day they were communicating with me by email. They were communicating with me through text, sending me pictures, sending me videos, because I was concerned about him, about his anxiety. And it's like, I didn't want him to think like I was rescued from Texas, I was brought to Canada, and then I was adopted out, I was brought back. Now I'm in a new home, and now from the new home, I'm in another place without my new mom. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, I was super concerned about him. And they were like, he's fine, don't worry, we're gonna, he'll be okay. They ended up dropping him off. And when it was a certain individual who dropped him off, she said that he was going to be in my care for a while because they wanted to make sure that his urinary issues were resolved. And also he was going to be getting dental work done because he had some dental issues. So he's going to be having surgery. That's what she told me. So here I am expecting him to be with me for a while. So that night I saw those 2 articles written by, I'm not going to say her name, but written by you know who. And I was reading these articles and I'm like, no freaking way. Like, these like, this isn't real. Like, and then I didn't want to believe it, but then I did. A part of me did believe it.
Yeah,
Just
you're
because
talking about like a Toronto Star article, that is, right?
yes,
Yeah.
it's a Toronto. I wasn't sure if I could
About
say
our
that.
dog rescue and a
Yes.
scam. Yeah.
Yes. And about just the way that they played around with fosters and adopters, and after requesting medical records. So I was like, you know what? I might want to adopt him, but I don't want to adopt him if I don't know the full extent of his medical condition. So I'm going to request his records. So I emailed that person who had dropped him off, who was the person that interviewed me, the person who I'd been communicating with. And I said, I said to her, I'm like, as you know, the dog and I have developed a great bond. Like he's so excited. He was so excited whenever he'd see me. Even that night when she dropped him off, he was just like jumping, going crazy. I said, I'm thinking of adopting him, but I was wondering if you could provide me with his medical records before I decide to take that step. That was on March the 9th. Okay. From March the 9th up until March 20th, I hadn't heard from anyone. On March 20th, I received an email, not even regarding my medical records request. It was an email advising that there is to be a follow-up appointment for him and that they were going to be picking him up again. But the person that was going to pick him up was like a head honcho. This person is the director of operations for that organization. And I was like, why out of all of the volunteers, why is she picking him up? So that was like, my heart's beating so fast because I was so angry. Like I knew something was up and I'm like, you know what? You're overthinking things. Don't overthink, like he'll be fine. So I had a bag that I would send that I would either take with me or that they would take with them when they would pick him up for his vet appointments. And that day I was working. I told my son at 9:00, this person's going to come by, give them the bag and bring him down. My son brings the bag down and she tells him, oh, we don't need the bag. It's just a follow-up appointment. My son calls me and tells me this and I'm like, they're not bringing him back. And he's like, don't say that, Mom. I'm like, they're not bringing him back. I told my sister-in-law, because that's who I'm the nanny for, is for them. I told her, I'm like, they're not dropping him off. And she's like, no, don't say that. That would be really evil. And I'm like, it's a feeling I had since the 20th, since I received this email. And she's like, no, come on, don't say that. And so I emailed them at 2:30. I emailed them, hey, I'm just checking in, just wanted to know how he's doing. And, I hope he's okay. Nobody replied. And I CC'd 2 other individuals who were in on the email from, the follow-up vet appointment. Okay. Then I ended up texting the person who picked him up. She didn't reply. I ended up texting the vetting manager. She didn't reply. Then I get an email from the person who I had communicated with constantly. I think she's like the foster manager or whatever. She sent me an email. Hi, blank. It has become apparent that the dog will need a lot of vet appointments in the near future and going forward. The team has decided that it will be best for the dog to go stay with the vetting manager so that he can receive around-the-clock specialty care and access to as many vet appointments as he may need, while he waits to be cleared for adoption. We understand this will be incredibly hard for you as you cared for the dog very much, but we need to look out for what we see best for his medical needs. Thank you so much for everything you put into his care. This was on March the 23rd. He's already up for adoption on the website. So if he needed all of these frequent vet appointments, if he was going to have a lot of those in the near future, how, not even 2 weeks later, is he up for adoption? And number one, his age on the adoption site, his age is wrong. It's wrong. That was his age when they brought him in from Texas. So he hasn't aged a year. And there is no information about him at all. Like there is no like, oh, he has incontinence issues or he's going to need dental work. Nothing. They have him all
Just
done
here's
up.
a Yorkie. Here's their
nothing about
average
him.
age and name.
Yep, that's it. That's it. So when I received that email from that person, I replied to them and I said, it's funny that you say that. I read the 2 articles about your organization and I didn't want to believe it. But after this experience, I believe every single word that I read. Going forward, I do not want to have any affiliation with you nor your organization. And please stop all email correspondence as of now. So no reply, nothing. I haven't gotten any emails. I think I got 1 email after that, but it was just like, they send emails like literally once or twice a day about dogs that need fosters right away oh, we need an emergency foster. So I got one of those, and then I blocked all emails from them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, it's funny to me. I think it was like, this is discipline to me. Like, you requested the medical records. How dare you do that? We're taking him away from you.
In their opinion, maybe they thought you were trying to look into things too much.
Yeah, I was. Like,
Yeah,
I really
yeah,
was.
like they're like, well, we don't want to give you that information.
And that's
So
fine. So
what would you say, what did you think, if you think back on this experience, what do you think were the red flags that you can kind of now point out to yourself that something was fishy?
it's the way that they communicate with you, number one. So much hidden information when it comes to the medical. Why can't you tell me if he has a heart murmur? Like, why are these things that you cannot tell me? Like, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense at all to me. I know people, like, I know one guy who runs a rescue specifically for pit bulls, and like the whole bully breed.
Bully breeds.
He
Yep.
Yeah, he lets his people know. Like, he lets everybody know, like, these are the medical conditions, and it's up to you as a person to want to take that in or not. Somebody like me, a single mother, I wouldn't be able to take in a sick dog.
Yes.
But I would like to know if the dog is sick before I go ahead and adopt, because I don't like the idea of these dogs jumping back and forth. It's not fair to them.
Any other points in time where you just thought, this is a scam, or this feels wrong?
Yeah, weekly they're bringing in like over 100 dogs. How many fosters do you guys have? Like, where are these fosters coming from?
Sure,
That
seeing the inside and seeing what their intake was.
Oh, every week we received a huge email with the number of dogs that they were bringing in on, like, say for example, on a Sunday, and the number of fosters that they needed. And obviously they weren't going to get that many fosters. Then every day as the week went on after that intake, we would get an influx of emails just saying that there's still dogs that need fosters. So those dogs that need fosters, where are they? If they're here, where are they waiting for fosters?
Mm-hmm.
So, and they don't have like an actual location where they work out of daily, or where dogs are, like a humane society, for example, like Etobicoke Humane Society. They have their dogs there, and some dogs there, and they have some in foster care. So where do these dogs go? And then I also, because there's the foster support, the foster group on Facebook. So if you're a foster, you join this group. So they haven't removed me from there yet. So I'm seeing there's dogs being brought back all the time, and they're not saying why.
Yes.
So they're adopted out and they can no longer adopt. So now we need fosters until we find an adopt. But like, why are they bringing them back?
There's a lot of rehoming happening.
A lot.
Yeah.
A lot.
Yeah. And interesting that you were very much interested in taking on the dog, and they didn't pursue you at all in that regard.
No, I think they want to keep you as a foster, because they know that if they lose you as a foster, like, and then and you're an adopter now, there is no chance of you fostering another dog and then there being a new adopter. So I think it's just the more they want to make money.
I think that's the thing, is that from your experience and the other person I've talked to, and I've heard other experiences, like, it's across the board. It's not just about one part of the process. It's not just like, okay, we got the dog and it wasn't what we thought it was going to be. It's like, we tried to foster and there was a lot of fishy stuff happening and terrible communication, but then also, outright, like, cut off relationships, or we're trying to adopt and we're only in the interview process and there's strange stuff happening, right? Or even to have to just pay to put in an application. Like, there's a lot of strange things going on in this dog rescue, that it's obvious, like, it's happening in any part of the process. Wow, that was just so enlightening. Those 3 experiences, completely different, yet there's a common thread of dishonesty and a lack of communication and quick change of plans. Really not something you hear from the average dog rescue. There is a process for these things, and they've come to figure out that you need to be transparent in order to reduce having to take dogs back, and you need to be transparent about medical records on all fronts in order to make sure dogs are getting proper care and you're able to adopt them out sooner because they are cared for, but then also that they don't come back. And in order to be a well-functioning rescue, you need to keep your fosters and your volunteers. And in order to do that, honesty and good communication is a must. So it's a lot to process, but I really want to drive it home now and give you some more red flags that you can use in your dog rescue search, or you can help others know about when they're looking for rescue dogs, so that we can avoid working with organizations that are dishonest or not transparent, or coming across a scam on Petfinder. I don't want you to fall victim to any of those bad practices that just really stand to give you a terrible dog adoption experience. So here's some red flags you should keep top of mind while you're searching for your rescue dog in order to avoid any dog rescue scams. 1, the dog is not spayed, neutered, or up to date on shots. That basic vetting should be done, and a dog definitely should be spayed or neutered prior to adoption, unless there's a good reason for it, like it's too young a puppy and they're going to make sure that you spay or neuter that dog when it's of the appropriate age to be done, or there's some specific medical reason that that's not to be done. But there should certainly be an onus on the rescue to do that, because they are all about population control. And if they're not about population control, that is a red flag. Number 2, the dog is currently out of country. Certainly you can find lots of rescues that are doing foster to adopt situations, but in general, dogs that are being adopted out before they have come into the country, how has a rescue really assessed this dog appropriately if they're a Canadian rescue, right? I really think that that's a shifty way of adopting dogs out. You should first be bringing them in. They should be with a foster or a shelter. They should be decompressing for a certain period of time. You should get to vet them, get to know them, and then put them up for adoption. There should be a period of time at which to find out details about this dog so that you match it with the right family. And relying on maybe some rescue across the border to give you all the details or all that information, that's a lot of trust you have to have on them to be relaying the right information to the rescue in Canada, or if it's just an outright US based rescue sharing that information. Again, a bit strange to do that kind of out of country scenario. So I just don't recommend it. I recommend you know that rescue has that dog in their care and knows that dog personally before adopting it. Number 3, not getting to meet the dog before confirming adoption. If they require you to say, yes, I will adopt that dog, but you haven't met it, I have a problem with that. It's one thing to say, okay, we're preparing the contract so that it's a quick process if you do meet the dog and you're able to take it home the same day, whatever. But to outright say, yep, you're confirmed, and now you can meet it when you take it home, nah. First, meet and greet, then confirm that adoption if that's the way it goes, and then seal the deal. But not not the other way around. Number 4, their adoption profile is strangely short and doesn't have much negative feedback. So there's not a lot about what you might find a struggle with this dog or what you might need to work on. Occasionally you'll find a dog that, really, they're just a dream come true, they're easygoing, but there's always some weakness, and it just shows transparency from a dog rescue if they're willing to share that in the profile. And that's what I want to see, because I want to know as much as possible about what I'm getting into before I adopt a dog. Number 5, a minimal adoption process. So if the application is super brief and there's not some detailed questions on there, if there's maybe not a phone call interview after that adoption application, if there's not a house tour, like having a really brief process where basically it's just a minimal application, if any, that should have you questioning how much this rescue cares about the home they're placing this dog in. And that screams scam to me. And number 6, requiring a full payment or a down payment before meeting a dog, or even requiring an application fee at all. All of those things are very suspect and really should not be required. There's no reason for that. And anyone who's doing that is probably in it for profit, needs the money up front because this deal's going to fall through and they're just going to run away with it. Or, just in it for the wrong reasons. So if you see one of these signs, start looking for more signs. And if you see 3 red flags, then leave. Do not continue this adoption process. Do not look to adopt from a rescue that has these red flags, because that's certainly concerning and you're likely to face some issues. If you want a complete list of dog rescue red flags to watch for, get my freebie on my website at www.pawdoptionguide.com/is this a dog rescue scam. Other than the lack of care for the dogs involved in some of these cases, the absolute worst thing about these scams is that they really deceive people who are trying to do good. And they're often first-time dog adopters, and they're often turned off of dog adoption because they were not appropriately matched with their dog, which leads to dissatisfaction, but it also gives them the wrong impression of what dog adoption should be like. And I really hate that fosters and volunteers are also going through these experiences and getting a bad impression as well, so much so that they might never try and volunteer their time again. Please know that there are many great rescues out there, and those are the majority. We're really talking about a rare few, but there's so many out there that are doing great work saving dogs and rehoming them for the right reasons, the least of which is making a profit or receiving notoriety for having these massive intakes of dogs. Take note, when large groups of people have negative experiences with an organization, especially when those experiences are in each aspect of it, working, volunteering, and adopting. The rescue organization we spoke of today is just not calculating the collateral damage that is incurred when you bring hundreds of dogs from Texas across the border with a lack of infrastructure in which to care for them. And when we're talking infrastructure, we're talking about a lack of volunteers, a lack of fosters, a lack of finances. This organization is just lacking in any redeeming qualities. If you're interested in learning more about dog rescue scams, I highly recommend you check out the links in the show notes. Otherwise, thank you for listening to today's episode. I hope that you got some really helpful tips on avoiding dog rescue scams today, and that you're sure to not be deterred from adopting that rescue dog of your dreams, because it is out there and there are so many wonderful organizations and shelters just waiting to help you in that journey. hit subscribe or follow in order to get updates on when new episodes air. And don't forget to get in touch with me. If you love today's episode, then take a screenshot, share it on your Instagram story, and make sure to tag me at Pawdoption Guide. Thanks again for listening, and now just go forth and share the word about these dog rescue scams so that we can make sure that no one else has to have a bad experience like the ones we talked about today.